Hey there, people. It's Bad Doc Boone here with the latest episode of Bad Doc Boone Sonic Seller. And before I get any further with this, I want to say if you like what you see on this channel from the previous videos, or you like this video, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can know when we got more stuff coming down the pike. And I was hoping to have this video done a lot sooner than now, but there have been a lot of things this past week that seem to have taken more precedence and weighed a lot more on my mind. Between a certain war for oil and what's going on in Minneapolis, it's going to get ugly out there before it gets better. So I think we all know we all saw the video. We all know what happened. And don't let any bad faith actors try to make excuses for what it did, or saying that you saw something you didn't see. It was fairly obvious from both videos of the event what went down. But anyway, those are completely other topics, and I want to talk about something a bit more music related. For today, I want to refer back to our first episode. If you remember, it came out about a week or so before Thanksgiving. We talked about how to respond to your right-wing relatives who are basically going to bring up, the Super Bowl halftime show as something to complain about. And during that, we also pointed out the rise of certain quote-unquote alternative halftime shows that were proposed, most notably by right-wing organization Turning Point USA. Well, I decided to check in, see what was going on, who was going to be performing at it, how were you going to be able to see it? Is it going to be on some TV channel, or do you have to stream it? Just out of curiosity. And what I found was absolutely nothing. In fact, I think the most recent article that even mentioned about that was December. Yep, there's no knowledge of who's performing at it. There's no knowledge of what website you'd be able to stream it off of, who had the rights for that. In fact, we don't know anything we didn't already learn by early to mid-November. And back then we learned that there were initial talks with a couple of contemporary Christian artists who were fairly known within that circle, but not really well known to those of us who don't live in that subculture or don't monitor the religious right. So you don't need to know who they are if you don't want to. And that one, I think, fell through fairly quickly. And I don't know why, but my conjecture is they probably realized it was going to take a lot more work than the organization was willing to do. Then we also heard there was allegedly talks that they were going to be aired on NBC, but that fell through. Now, I'm not sure if there were any talks at NBC, but I will say I have a pretty good idea why that wasn't going to happen. The Super Bowl is on February 8th. That's, give or take a couple days, a month from now. On February 6th, NBC is going to be broadcasting the Winter Olympics from Milan, at least in America. That's 2 days before the Super Bowl. And I think one thing we both know is, you as a viewer and me as somebody talking on here, they're not going to interrupt something out of the chunk of the middle of the Olympics just to air this one program. It's just not going to happen. So what does that leave us now? Well, I have a feeling it's not going to happen. That was never going to happen. It was just something to try to get people interested in organization, especially since their attempt to turn TPUSA's founder into some beloved martyr / savior we're all supposed to work with, kind of backfired. But not before some people's careers got destroyed and some people's lives kind of got pushed down a few pegs in the process. So why do I think it's not going to happen? Well, they announced it in October. It's going to be February. That takes about roughly 3.5, maybe 4 months. You're being generous. And it's a lot of work to get something like that done in 4 months. Who are you going to get for there? Where are you going to have it? Where are you going to? Are you going to just book a soundstage somewhere to do it, or are you actually going to book it at an arena? I know people were all shocked when the Charlie Kirk Memorial happened within a couple weeks after his death, but doing that, I don't know how that happened. If I was more conspiracy minded, I think that that was an inside job, but we're not going to get into that right now. And I'm not that conspiracy minded, at least not without proof, and we don't have proof. But doing something on that event takes months of planning. I mean, before Bad Bunny even announced that he was going to be headlining it, he was kind of held down by some agreements that he couldn't talk about it. And that probably was in there for several months before that. So it's just hard to get that running. We still have no idea who's performing it. In fact, we see more AI ideas of artists that are supposedly performing it on AI-created posters or memes than we do any actual information. And it's from this AI misinformation that they've tried to let people who, let's just say don't really know what's going on, think that people like Joan Baez or Neil Young or Body Raider Jackson Brown are going to be performing at that. Which, if you know anything about any of those artists, know that they're pretty far removed from anything that Charlie Kirk would represent, much less the Turning Point Faith, Family, and Freedom halftime show. Now, some of their listeners who don't pay attention to politics or might actually believe all that, especially if they live in a news desert in some small town somewhere, but generally that's not likely. I saw another one that was trying to claim all these country stars, including Willie Nelson, was going to do it. Willie, very unlikely. There were a couple that might, but it was somebody pointed out that the poster that was created was all AI because the faces didn't even only vaguely looked like the artist. So, and there's no other documentation. So we're in a world where we're dealing with a lot of AI misinformation and over an event that was pushed probably to get headlines more than anything else. Now, could it happen? It's possible. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it hit the month to go a couple days back. So we got a month, give or take a couple days, which means whoever's playing this has to be working triple overtime to make sure everything's right. And you also got to let people know who's performing, got to let people know where they can watch it. And so far, we've seen none of that, which leads me to think, while it's not completely impossible that this quote-unquote alternative halftime show will happen, I don't think it's likely. It's just something that, I think it was something that people pushed to try to get some headlines, and we haven't heard much from it since. So, is this alternative halftime show, quote-unquote, going to happen? Well, given the two Christian artists, after the falling through with Turning Point, ended up pushing back their Jesus Bowl performances, I have a feeling that it's not. And given that, performing artists knows if you're doing that level of touring that every performance usually takes a long time before that. So, then again, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and I know I'm going to be wrong again somewhere down the road, but so what about if you're one of these people that is somewhat upset or not interested in watching Bad Bunny? You don't have to watch. You can watch something else. Nobody's making you. So you never had to watch it. I know you all like to think that you're being persecuted, whatever, but it's no persecution. Bad Bunny has over 100 hits, either as a solo artist or in collaboration with others, in the Billboard Hot 100 since 2018. He was gotten because, when you have that kind of track record, you're going to have that kind of pull. So, and those wondering why I'm not bringing up the Spotify charts or like the iTunes charts is, I wanted to get something that older people would recognize. Yeah, and they might be using Spotify or Apple Music, whatever, but but they don't really think those are as important. If you meant Billboard, that references their childhood. That references Casey Kasem's American Top 40. So, something like that. Again, we got a month to go before the Super Bowl. We don't know who's going to win. Although we do know, since Kansas City's out of the running, we know the owner of the Kansas City team's granddaughter doesn't have to worry about watching that offensive Bad Bunny performance, whatever she thinks. But, but is there going to be some sort of family-friendly alternative to the Super Bowl? In terms of the halftime show, it's possible, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Anyway, be careful out there. We're in a very dangerous time right now. Be on the lookout for misinformation. If I can know anything about the topic to what's currently going on, you're going to see a lot of it out there. Make sure to double and triple check everything just to make sure that, some video you see that's claiming there's violence going on might be years old, and they're trying to make it look like it happened in the last couple of days. Double check and triple check. And otherwise, why somebody's playing you for a fool. Anyway, this is Bad Doc Boone with Bad Doc Boone Seller. Once again, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can know what's up. Anyway, like I said, we're living in a dangerous time with a lot of misinformation. Double check on everything, and we'll see you later.